Hey guys, Tarek is here. I really procrastinated doing this video, but I finally did it, and I want to bring you my Consecrated Path of Endurance Juggernaut build and a small video build guide to it. The intention was to do a proper written guide and like different build tiers, but I'm not that motivated on doing that currently, with PoE 2 being delayed and everything, just like kind of in the PoE headspace. But I figured I'd release some usable build guide, rather than take another month of procrastinating and releasing the proper thing I intended to do. And if the build gets some attention and a lot of you guys want more detailed stuff, I might look into it. But for now, we got this one. All right, what does the build do? As you can see, it does pretty big DPS. That was kind of the point of this one. Much less with my flicker. It is not paper thin, but it is nowhere near as tanky as the flicker. But it has a flicker-esque playstyle. It jumps around by expanding not frenzy, but endurance charges, and it has a way bigger AoE, as you saw, and your entire screen more or less just dies every quarter second, and you just yeet through the entire map or whatever you're doing. It's mainly for non-Uber content, but if you're a good player and like me, you can also do Uber content, but you have to dodge ball phases and whatnot on Uber Exarch, and well, that's just not for me. I can't dodge shit, and so I don't do Ubers with it. Can also do tier 17s, but you will want Progenesis instead of a Tincture for map clearing, unless you hate yourself, because the Progenesis really makes it like more forgiving. You can do it with a Tincture, but it doesn't really help you in the clear, because you do enough damage anyways, and you can swap Tincture back in for boss. And since the funniest thing to me is like one-shotting 4 Maven bosses at once, I do 8 mods mostly with the build. That's just really, really fun to me. But yeah, you can use it for anything, or you can use it for anything non-Ubers and Ubers if you're good at it, if you're good at the game. So it can clear all content. All right, if you're still interested in this build, we can just jump right in to the game, and I'm going to show you how to build this. Well, first off, fair warning, I haven't done the proper thing and did like build tiers and whatnot. I just made one build tier that is high end. That's also what I'm playing here, and it's fairly high budget. This is currently like about 1 mirror in here, minus the mageblood. But you can do it for less. It is revolving around a mageblood, so you kind of need the mageblood for this version. I'm sure you can do it without it, but I didn't ponder in that direction yet. So for now, I guess you have to have a mageblood. All right. So the basis, how does it work? First off, it does not do Warcry stacking as most other builds do. You can still use my variation and do Warcry stacking, but that's just essentially copying what is kind of the norm and just slapping on more crit. The core concept is we're stacking 3 things, or 2.5 things, you could say. We're stacking endurance charges and we're stacking crit. So for endurance charges, this is pretty straightforward. You just get all the endurance charges on the tree, and you get the endurance charges you can afford on your gear. That is done with implicits on your rings. The ring, or the ring type I chose to go for, has some more synergies with other decisions later on that I will go into. And these are late in the league, like now, not that easily attainable, but they're very easily attainable endurance charge. Circle rings are, there's still a lot of them being sold this late in the league. You also want reliquaries, and if you can afford it, with the endurance charge corruption. Another endurance charge does do some heavy lifting, but you can, if you're on a budget, use one without. It's, I think, a 60 divine item, and without it, it's a 2 divine item. So quite a difference. Next off, we have crit. Crit is done mostly on 3. And Marylines. Marylines is a very underused item. It's an unbelievably cheap item, and it's also the reason why very expensive corruption like additional curse is pretty affordable, because it's just a very underused and very common item that has some quite good critical strike multiplier here, and it also comes with culling strike. We have we have quite a lot of critical strike multiplier, but we also have to have a lot of critical strike chance. In the second to last line on Marylines, it says the 44, the base value is 40%, but I have 12% quality in here, and it is 44% less critical strike chance. That's quite a lot, but with staffs, or specifically an eventuality rod, you can have like 11.45, I think is the max, with 38% instead of 37. We have 37 instead of 38 here. 11.45 11.45 crit chance as a base crit chance is quite insane. That's really, really high, and that allows us to get 100% crit chance with Assassin's Mark applied, even with a Marylines. That's pretty good. So, that stuff is also the hardest piece of gear to get. It is quite expensive, and you essentially have to recombine it yourself. There is probably a few on market, but they're close to a mirror in cost and or in price, and that's just not worth it. This cost me about 200 divines to make, and that is a full 5 tier 1 Fizz war stuff. You can probably do a tier 2 or whatnot recombination, but this is going to be a bit of a nerve-wracking task to craft this. So that is the hardest piece to acquire for this gear. These aren't really crafted and sold, so you essentially have to do it yourself. Well, then we have also this piece here. That's why mageblood is also mandatory at this point, unless I think about how to move that out. This one doesn't have the suffix, but you have the 100% increased critical strike, and the suffix I moved to the next one here. And so you have, if you have it on one flask, it's 155% increased crit chance plus the 70% increased effect. And that's always applied to you. That's like the only big thing you can do with damage on a mageblood nowadays, because we have attack speed removed, and the only thing you still have is silver flask. So silver flask and diamond flasks are the remaining 2 damage options on a mageblood, and we're using them. And the last, what I said before, the half stacking is strength stacking. This is kind of a luxury, and it's pretty good, but it is the weakest of all 3, and that's why I said it's half stacking parameter. And it just gives you more damage from physical damage, because we're scaling our physical damage, and it also gives you some life. So pretty good stat, but if you don't have the budget to do strength on your gear, you can just kind of drop it, essentially. All right, let's go to gear. What do you need to do with gear? We're going to go to Path of Building for this one. We're going to look at the skills I chose. We have just Consecrated, Path of Endurance, General, 6 link. All right, all of these are for damage, obviously, but the Pulverize, that's kind of a 2-thing link. It gives us increased area of effect, which we have a lot of already, but we want more. And you can swap this out if you just like more damage. So something like very probably fire penetration, or also something like roofless, added fire damage. There's quite a few things. Fire penetration is actually worse than pulverize, but added fire damage and so added, not fire penetration, and roofless. And actually, fire penetration is probably misconfigured. It's probably better because it gives you you can actually turn it on, but just to tell you why this is actually good. Awakened fire penetration has a chance to inflict exposure, and we don't have a source of exposure, so this is actually a pretty good link. And now that would remove 22.5% damage, and now adding added fire damage, and now you can see it's above it. So it's just a configuration thing essentially. But damage wise, these are all better. Pulverize is still pretty good, and it has AoE. That's why I chose this by default, because it will just feel better usually. Next we have auras, obviously, right? Every build has auras, but this one has one because we're using a sublime. I'll go over that later. And Herald of Ash, Purity. Herald of Ash is kind of pseudo explosions and just physical as extra fire, and Herald of Purity is just more physical damage. Blood and Sand for more area damage. That's 27% more area damage, which is quite a lot, and we just lose 5% area of effect. Oliver Enlighten, because the skill is very mana hungry, and we just have mana leech, so we want to get a pretty high pool on unreserved mana that we so that we don't run out as often on the mana. Leap Slam pretty straightforward. We just Leap Slam from A to B. We have a Battle Mage Cry. We're using 2 Warcries here. Both actually give their buffs because you're not doing Warcry stacking with auto exertion. So we get these buffs. Battle Mage is here for applying flammability and Assassin's Mark, which we use because we can get a pretty cheap Marylines, right? Because Marylines is a pretty cheap item. And that is that setup is also the reason why tankier bosses usually die on the 3rd hit, because the first 2 hits apply these curses, then the boss dies. That's just for you to know. When you pop Battle Mage Cry, these 2 will be applied on the next 2 hits. We also have Infernal Cry, which on bosses should give you 20% of physical as extra fire damage. And it also adds explosions, which doesn't really matter. And it also does combust. The second part on the skill you see here, it deals damage in an area. So every time you attack with Infernal Cry up, you make a small explosion on yourself. And that explosion can be supported with combustion, and combustion will reduce the fire resistance of the enemy. So we're doing some resistance reduction here, together with flammability and some other reductions. So we do some debuff stacking on the enemy as well, and with proliferation, the chance to apply this gets higher because this actually has to ignite. And it has a base chance of, I think, 85% with the links. And on at least 2 hits, you will ignite the enemy, and it will keep up longer. So you keep the 10% fire penetration debuff essentially for the entire duration of when you're hitting things. We also have an automation setup. I have Phase Run in here. Phase Run is a PoE warrior thing on the damage. It's a lot of damage, but the buff is up for 1 second. It's a rotating buff essentially. That's why I'm not ticking this on. It gives us in this config 60 million DPS, which is pretty insane. And this is up like 20% of the time, I think it's a rotating debuff of 4 seconds down and then 1 second up. The base duration is, the secondary duration is 0.2%, 0.2 seconds, but you consume frenzy charges to increase the duration. And since we also have blood rage on automation, we generate frenzy charges. So de facto, it is a rotation of 4 seconds down, 1 second up. And I'm not enabling it, but it is up fairly long, and you have it then for 1 second. You attack close to 4 times in this 1 second. So you will feel these hits. Some of them actually have that damage bonus. I'm just not configuring it. Molten Shell obviously as well. It's up whenever it is up, and that's our base hit pool. And that's it up with Molten Shell. So take this with a grain of salt. Each of these configs, it is just what it is. It's a rotating debuff. We also have another rotating debuff. I'll show you when we go over 3, which is Magmatic Strike. So if you PoE warrior a bit, you can put up both rotating debuffs, and suddenly you have 110 million more DPS. That is just kind of when the stars align, when you have all buffs up. These scenarios happen, but I don't look at setting it up. It's just when it happens, it happens. That is what we have in skills. So once you have all these skills, you will want the gear obviously too. And we're going to start with all the jewels. We have Sublime that I just talked about before. Sublime for more critical chance, and more critical chance is pretty insane. It's a more modifier, right? It comes after the increased modifiers, and it essentially cancels out most of the less, or not most, but quite a good portion of the less of the Marylines. So running this will enable you to run Marylines essentially, and it just increases the effect. It also increases, since precision doesn't just give critical chance, it also gives what's it called again? Accuracy, right? And accuracy helps with Juggernaut and attack speeds from accuracy. We have 2 classes. I'll show you them on 3 actually. One cluster has Graceful Execution and Martial Mastery, and Martial Prowess just because it's the best of all 3 remaining ones. The others are okay, but Martial Prowess is the best. And we choose Martial Mastery because it gives us strength, and we get 20% attack speed if we have 600 or more strength. That's why we're also doing strength, or that's one of the reasons why we're doing strength stacking, or like at least soft strength stacking, which is achieved by this. This is just increased strength here and flat strength, and that allows us to get to 700. This isn't a lot in terms of attribute stacking, but for soft, just throw it in. It's pretty good. And we also need the Graceful Execution. We're really starved on intelligence, and you need intelligence to wear the stuff. So you will want to get intelligence from wherever you can, essentially. And the other stuff is just accuracy speed, attack speed, critical strike chance. We all need that. That's fine. And Dex int, pretty good. On the other one, it's a base tab that uses staff attack, like staff attacks. And staffs, again, Martial Prowess, same as before. And staffs can have Overlord, which is just free Fortify and a 30% increased damage. 30% increased damage is decent, but Fortify just on this one node, pretty good. Fan of Fortify, I'm taking that. And then we have Weight Advantage, which is just pretty good strength and attacks. And it has a 4% chance to do double damage, which is pretty good for a single node on a cluster. We have a Forbidden combo. It doesn't matter if you choose Unyielding or Unrelenting. They're both unbelievably cheap. These are essentially trash. I don't know. Nobody buys those. They're pretty niche, essentially. This one gives you a lot of physical and elemental reduction because we have 11 endurance charges. That's 11% additional on each. And we have unyielding, that is a lot of AoE radius and quite some damage too. I'm choosing this mainly because of the AoE, because that feels better. It is a full forbidden set, so 2 joules. You can get more DPS if you just do what I'm going to talk about next, the rare one. But I like this better because it has AoE added as well. And well, they're unbelievably cheap. You can just buy them for, I think, 50 KS each or 100 K, something like that. Pretty like the cheapest forbiddens there is. Light of Meaning, pretty neat gem, and the physical, it doesn't matter if it's physical or fire damage per skill. They're both really cheap, and you can just go ham on the corrupts. You can do crit chance, damage penetration, whatever you find. They're usually very cheap. Just get whatever corrupted thing you can get, essentially. The base ones are also like baseline. Whatever is the lowest price, Light of Meaning will go. This will go for that. We have Watchers too. Watchers isn't as cheap, but it's pretty good too. I choose attack speed and critical multiplier, but just anything that has precision, really. You can get a tri precision, but it's not worth the price. They will be very expensive, and it's just not that good for the price. We also have a Lethal Pride. As you can see, I'm a big fan of area effect jewels, and we have it this one down here because it gives us stuff like chance to deal double damage. We have life somewhere too, reduced extra damage from critical chance on this one, physical damage, life, double damage, physical damage, and there's also physical damage as extra fire damage. So quite a lot of good combos. We don't need anything specifically, just get as many good combos you can. That is it for jewels. Concerning uniques, we have Relicash. You need Relicash. You don't need it with endurance charges, as mentioned before, but you need a Relicash. The Relicash is needed because while we can have up to 11 endurance charges, we will not have 11 endurance charges all the time, and we just want to be counted as 11 endurance charges all the time. That also gives us a max frenzy and power. That's why we're choosing a frenzy here, because it's just cheap additional damage that we don't need to invest into anything else. And I used to have a power up here, but it's not good enough because we don't gain enough crit from here. So I'm not taking that. It's not worth the 2 points at all. So just frenzy, and obviously the endurance charges, since we're an endurance charge stacker. Then also we have Maralene's, obviously pretty core to the build. We just want to do a lot of crit, and that's it. You can, as you see, it's configured with 17%. That puts us just about here, and you can play with this. It's really hard to get, since you're using corrupted currency to get to correct, or it's really hard to get an exact crit percentage. So you probably don't want to gamble for that. It's really annoying. But getting, like, for example, 12% or something, if you have too much over crit, can give you a few more critical strike multiplier points here, and you lose on the less crit chance. If you can afford it, you can reroll that, or you can just use it without any quality at all. We need endurance charge ring. I'm choosing Circle of Ambition. I have deliberately removed all the mods that affect per health. So there is one I can show you on my own. I'll just copy it in the PoB. Mine actually has quite a lot of more stats. So we have mana reservation, we have fire res, we have physical damage reduction. You can roll a lot of good stuff on here. and you don't need any of that. They're all just added sugar, essentially. What you want is the maximum endurance charges. And the best base to get this on is a Circle of Ambition, because the Circle of Ambition gives you all attributes and all res. You need those two things really badly, essentially. And you can still do this on other circles. There's good other circles. Circle of Ambition, obviously best, and Circle of Anguish. It gives you the possibility of getting some strength, and also the Herald of Ash things. So, for example, fire and max resistance isn't too interesting, but fire damage, increased fire damage while affected. And there's also buff effect from Herald of Ash. These give you damage as well. But the strength and added fire damage is pretty uninteresting. Circle of, where is it? Guild for Iron Ring is pretty good because it gives you all attributes. It doesn't give you all res, but it gives you all attributes. That's pretty good. That solves some portion of your intelligence requirement, and it can still give you, wrong one, and it can still give you some pretty good stuff. So damage reduction while affected, or buff effect, or physical damage. All of these are pretty good. The added armor is okay. Added physical damage is okay. Yeah, pretty decent. So Circle of Guild and Circle of Ambition are essentially the best bases to get this on. If you're poor, you can get it on something else and kind of shift around stats somewhere else. You have to get intelligence and resistance somewhere else. So you have to probably drop some strength and whatnot. You just have to figure out what kind of circle you can get and how to build around that. As mentioned, mageblood obviously still needed in the current state. Haven't thought about non-mageblood yet, mostly because of fixing the crit with the diamond flask. We have rares, and the first thing you will notice probably that differs from like every other Consecrated Path of Endurance build is I don't go Echoes of Creation. I'm not particularly liking Echoes of Creation, but you can still jam it into the build. You will have to drop a lot of strength though, and have to get resistance fixed here because we have a lot of resistance on suffixes because we only have these 3 rares and mageblood flasks to fix it. So it will take quite a bit of a hit on your suffixes if you use Echoes of Creation. You can still do it. It's more damage. I don't feel I would want to do that. Then we have just these are pretty regular box standard rares. That's what you want on rares usually. Just armor and life, straightforward. Strength if you can, and resistance, mostly chaos resistance and just some resistance, elemental resistance. Same thing here. On the gloves, you do want to get attack speed and attack speed and cast speed well focused. So this is a veiled mod if you can afford to craft with a veiled, or you will want to have fractured attack speed, and then you will want to do get the attack speed well focused. So this is a total of if you add those, okay, I don't want to do this in my head with all 3 things, but it's a lot of attack speed from the implicit, from the veiled mod, and this is an essence mod, that's why it's down here and not up here. And just again, armor, life, pretty straightforward. This doesn't even have any resistances, but if you need the resistance here, you just get the resistance, I guess. I used to have a royal plate in here, but I'm going with a conquest laminar, so evasion and armor, and this actually has like only a very little amount of armor less than the royal plate. So 3,100 armor instead of 3,900 in this config, and that's just not worth losing the evasion rating, because the evasion rating is pretty good with little investment. Armor needs a lot of investment to be good, but evasion rating, you just slap a bit of evasion on it and you have a pretty decent evade chance. So 47% in this config. I think in game I have 44%. Just for changing the base, very easy investment. Just go get the evasion. On here again, life, armor, evasion rating this time, not just armor. This suffix is pretty flex. You can do things like physical damage reduction. You can do regen life per second. That's what I have on my character. Or you can do resistance, for example, if you need them. And then you either... This is pretty hard to get with the veiled strength and intelligence. You can just go and do a crafted and get the strength and intelligence that is up to 25 here instead of 35, and then you will have to probably find some intelligence elsewhere too. For the strength bases here, namely the Giant Slayer and the Leviathan, you can do also strength dex hybrid bases, or you cannot. It doesn't make much of a difference, but the Conquest Laminar you will want with an evasion armor. And last but not least, we have this monstrosity, which is the Eventuality Rod. These only go to 20% quality, so you don't have to worry about buying a lot of over quality items, which would be insanely expensive because you craft these with recombinators. So the way you do this in detail is probably best learned from a specific recombinator guide. But TLDR is you get multiple items that have each of these pre and suffixes, and you recombine them until you get one that has all 5. So you do one prefix, one suffix, so you have a one prefix, one suffix item. Then you do another one of those, you recombine them, so you hopefully have a 2 prefix, 2 suffix. Then you recombine it with another one until you have a 3 prefix, 2 suffix item like this shown here, or this configured here, and then you slap on chance to deal double damage while focused. You will want probably to... The suffixes are not that hard to get in tier 1. The prefixes are very hard to get on tier 1. It costs me about 200 divines to craft this, and you will probably want to settle for tier 2s. Unless you're insane and want to do the same thing as me, but I don't recommend it. It's a hair pulling activity. You don't really want to go through that, but you do you. And last pieces of gear we have before we go to the tree is the flask. We have a tincture for damage. You swap this out with a progenesis, as I said, for tier 7 mapping, unless you hate yourself and you like to die. And the remaining flasks is the main thing is the diamond flask. So if we remove this, I'm not sure exactly how much our crit chance goes down, but by quite a lot. That's almost 30% crit, so you will want that. Let's just go one back, and we're back at 99% crit chance. You will want the diamond flask here. You also want an amethyst flask because getting chaos risk is pretty hard, and as a suffix you want the elemental resistance, unless you just drop some strength. Yeah, you have to get it somewhere, and resistances are pretty decent if you get it on mageblood. They used to be much higher, but still 20% all res times 1.7, pretty good. Silver flask, obviously we need the silver flask, just too good to not get. And you want increased armor, and then you also want this actually is misconfigured here. Not sure what the correct one is. You will probably want to have either cannot be inflicted with corrupted blood and bleeding, or reduced effect of curses, so you have 100% reduced effect of curses. This shocked one is misconfigured on the published PoB. It will be changed, but Just so you know, if you're watching the video, the granite is correct, but the suffix should be either of these two. Especially if you have corrupted blood immunity on your light of meaning, you probably don't want the bleed immunity here, and instead you will want the curse thing. All right, that's it for what your gear does. And now let's see for the tree. For the tree, we're essentially just going I'm just essentially going over the important things here. And we have Avatar Fire Keystone. The Avatar Fire is for the full conversion. Because base 50% of physical damage is converted to fire damage with Consecrated Path of Endurance. With Avatar of Fire, you have 100% Fizz to crit. That's why you can choose a Fizz staff and convert just everything to fire. And we have a lot of crit stuff on here. Obviously, we also have slots for our cluster jewels up here and down here. And we also get endurance charges, and the rest is mostly just for damage. Jewel slots, pretty straightforward stuff. Some life. This one is pretty good cluster or wheel actually here. Gives us a lot of crit chance, crit multiplier, and it also has a chance. I think it's this one. Yeah, this one gives a chance to gain endurance charge on melee critical strike, which we always do. And that makes the upkeeping of endurance charges pretty easy. This one is for soft strength stacking. Another crit one, cluster one. And these are just mostly attack speed, base damage, and critical multiplier here. We also have this one for defenses, increased evasion and armor rating. And since we have a lot of frenzy endurance charges, we can actually scale this a bit too. And since they are in the range of the lethal pride, it's pretty beneficial to get those as well. Down here, we just do endurance charge and kill. Also, just another layer of generating endurance charges. And increased damage per is pretty neat. You can drop this. I just threw it in because I had enough points to get it. This one as well, because you can, if you have a good one up here, you can grab this node up here, or you can just drop it. This has increased physical damage, so 5% overall added damage here. And I'm a big fan of instant leech, so we're going for instant leech, especially on the mana. It's important. Otherwise, you will have some mana problems because we have quite a high mana cost per second. That is only really alleviated by the implicit we get on the helmet, which is reduced mana cost of attacks and nothing else, because we choose a rare ring, not a rare, we choose an unique ring, and a rare ring would allow us to get -X mana cost, usually -7 mana cost on non-channeling skills, but we can't get that because it's unique. And that's it for tree, really. Going to go over how to craft these items really quick too. We talked about the eventuality rod. That's it. You want, at the end, as you see this red line, is adds covered on cover enemies on in ash on head, which enables this config. There we have it. And that is quite a lot of damage. It is increased fire damage taken. For these, you usually just want to, if you can afford it, fracture a suffix and then spam harvest bench for either defense or life until you get a good combo. You slam until you have good free prefixes. These are pretty easy to get. Harvest choose is pretty cheap, so very easy to do the prefixes. The suffixes are usually the hard thing. So what I did, I fractured my chaos, and then I did the remaining stuff with Eldritch Currency. Same thing on the other pieces as well. Prefixes you can do with defenses or life. Harvest spamming, it's pretty easy to get trade tier 1 actually too. So it just takes a long time. It's not very expensive though. And for the implicits here, we just take crit multiplier again, and we take less damage taken per strength. These are pretty neat. And here we go, more attack speed, because slams are pretty slow. And while we have like almost the entire screen, like it's technically like 60% of the screen as an attack area, this will still feel kind of fast. But we want to get every bit of attack speed we can get, so we're getting this on here as well, and increased damage per strength. Since we're soft stacking strength, you should get about 600 strength for this all to be worth. For one thing, the less damage taken, also for the increased damage, and for the increased attack speed on here. So a few points that will make strength stacking kind of good. That's essentially how you craft these, and they only are like, it's the only annoying piece to craft, and for that it is really annoying. So really looking forward to see frustrated people complaining about how hard it is to get this, because it is pretty hard to get. It is not complicated, but it takes quite a bit of recombinating, and that can be annoying. All right, that should give you all you need for the build. If you have any questions, please leave them in the YouTube comments or join my Discord server for help. Please don't expect a lot of help from other people already there. I'm the only one playing this build. Most people are playing my Flicker on that server, so you probably will get help from, if you get help from anyone, it's probably me. So you can join the Discord, or you can also come to me on stream. Not sure how much PoE I'm going to be playing in the next few weeks, as I'm waiting for PoE 2, and that sadly got delayed, but we'll see. You can still come join me there and ask a few questions. If I have some time, I'll answer them. All right, thank you all for watching, and hope to see you in the next one. Cheers and goodbye.